Hello, I'm Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the provocative discussion podcast series featuring myself, Tom Martin. I'm a longtime journalist with ABC News, CNN, CBS News, and so on. I love asking thought-provoking questions. And my co-host, the star of our episodes, is David Parker, joining us from San Francisco. David is the author of Income and Wealth and a San Francisco conservative, hence the title of our podcast series. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great to see
We're going
you.
to talk about somebody from San Francisco today.
Okay, I love our conversations. I come away learning something from every single conversation. I'm sure today will be no different. And you're a lifelong educator. You're a lifelong student. Have you read something recently that you'd like to share with our audience?
Somebody gave me a little publication from City Lights Books.
Famous,
I think
yeah.
the whole nation knows that bookstore.
Where Jack Kerouac used to hang out. Right?
They published Jack Kerouac. They published Allen Ginsberg, and the guy who wrote Naked Lunch, William Burroughs. I believe they published him, and even some Norman Mailer and Lawrence Ferlinghelli, the publisher. They published him, Tom Snyder. They published a lot of the big poets. And somebody found in a garage sale for $1.50 was the original cost of the book, Thoughts of Jerry Brown. They said to me, I think you're gonna like this little book. And I couldn't believe it when I'm reading it. that man is a San Francisco conservative. He's me. He's what I'm saying. He's a classical liberal. And I was just blown away.
Well, for our younger viewers and listeners outside of California, of course, Jerry Brown ran for president a number of times, and I think he was running for president maybe when I was old enough to vote for the very first time in the early 80s. But his nickname wasn't it Governor Moonbeam or something like that. So I never would have put that label on him, San Francisco conservative. But I want to hear more.
Yeah, nobody would have. And then this book was written mostly in 1974. I think it was published in 76 because he was running for president. It says, here's my statement. And it's everything I believe as a classical liberal, as a classical conservative. Jerry Brown, with that book, could not be elected today on the Democratic Party. So I have a little tiny essay I open up with, I am a San Francisco conservative. I feel very alone. Am I? In 1976, when he ran for president, California Governor Jerry Brown, also a San Francisco conservative, said this: I think there's a sense in America that it is a democracy. The whole Jeffersonian ideal was that people are temporarily in government. Government is not the basic reality. People are. The private sector. Any government is just a limited power to make things go better. Now we're inverting that, and government is all pervasive. Every time you turn around, there's government. I think that's not part of the American character. I'd like to reverse that. I think it's an uphill battle, given technology, mobility, and information flow. To put government on a smaller scale and still make it work is a pretty good trick if you can do it. Yeah, that's my man.
That's amazing. Limited government. Yeah, I don't hear that kind of talk coming out of Washington currently. That's amazing.
All my writing is about the founding fathers. I'm saying they got it right. It's not a constitution. Is not a slavery document. It doesn't talk slavery. They went out of their way not to talk slavery, to get the southern states to sign that thing. And Frederick Douglass said it's not a slavery document. Clarence Page from PBS NewsHour says, don't go there. It's not a slavery. The founding fathers rose to the occasion. They knew their faults. They knew slavery was evil. It's not. It's a pinnacle document in world history. And limited government. That's my theme.
Yeah. Do you think we will ever find our way back there? I mean, I know you've pointed out many examples of why big government has failed or just is not a good idea, obviously. But do you think we can find our way back to that position? I mean, I love what you read from Jerry Brown there.
That is the split, red, blue in this nation, and it's not being labeled quite, but underneath it all is, do we interpret the Constitution literally, that's red, or have we progressed from the Constitution? Progressivism, the Constitution is a rule of thumb. We're not taking it literally. That was written by some old misogynist slaveholders. And that's the split. And when the Constitution was, the Federalist Papers were written to get the states and the citizens to get behind the Constitution and approve it. And Federalist 51 is Madison. He says, I don't see why we even need a government. They all read Adam Smith. Just go about your business, do your job. Everything falls into place. I like to say human beings are part of nature, like every other animal. There's no species in nature where any one member of that species tells another what to do. Why are we telling each other what to do? Taxing each other, regulating each other. We're a species in nature. And if we just do what we're supposed to do without killing each other, without defrauding each other, yes, there's laws for that. Everything falls into place without any government. And then he was convinced that the line that convinced him was, not all men are angels. There's some bad people out there, really bad people out there. And so we need a neutral third party to protect life, liberty, property, social, political, economic freedom, but a neutral third party. So people don't take the law in their own hands. Fine, I buy all of that. That's the reasoning. He says, okay. And that's how the Constitution got written. That was the thought process.
Yeah. I just want to circle back for a minute. I think maybe you misspoke, or maybe I misheard you, but I know when you were speaking about the Constitution and the founding fathers and Jefferson and so on being slave owners, I think you said slavery is not evil, but I think you're just saying the Constitution does not endorse slavery, obviously.
No, I said the founding fathers admitted that slavery was evil. They recognized it. Even if they had slaves, they knew it was wrong.
Yeah, we're not going to put that in as part of the Constitution of America.
When Thomas Jefferson was younger, he was different than when he was older. He was a little bit sloppy, older, but younger, he says, make no mistake that all the slaves, all Black Negroes, are exactly like us. We are not 1 inch different than they are. Never forget that, he says.
Yeah, no, interesting.
And the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., it's got a circle up the top. It says, we're going to pay a big price for this slavery. It's wrong and evil. We're going to really pay for it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I just want to take a second for those joining us midstream here. You're listening to and or watching a San Francisco Conservative featuring me, Tom Martin, longtime journalist, asking the questions, and my esteemed colleague, David Parker, author of Income and Wealth and a San Francisco Conservative, there, of course, in San Francisco. So we're glad that you're with us today. And so what, lately, this week especially, I've been thinking about how fragile democracy is. At the time we're recording this, there are congressional committees, or a congressional committee, looking into what happened at the Capitol on January 6th, 2021. A couple hundred people storming through the windows and so on. And that reminds me that democracy is fragile. But then again, as you're talking about some progressives saying, well, let's just implement massive government programs, but that was never the original intention. So it seems we're getting people like that are getting far away from what the original intent was. What are your thoughts about the fragility of democracy and whether we need to worry right now?
Thomas Jefferson had used those words. It's so fragile, so easily lost that if you don't have an educated public, you're going to lose it. Again, Jefferson says we better have public schools, free for people who cannot afford it. And they better learn to read and do a little math and learn some history. Those three things. So when a politician speaks or does something, you know that this person is lying. You can do the math. This is not true. You have to have an aware citizen. And so we paid for schooling for people who couldn't afford it. That's all. They never thought in terms of the state administering the schools. We're the government. We're protecting you. We're not indoctrinating you. And the schools are a bit of indoctrination today. Most teachers, university and college and high school, are really politically to the left. David Brooks from New York Times opinion writer and PBS NewsHour commentator, he said 1.5% of all university professors are conservative. Woke liberals have crushed them and pushed them out. They do not exist, or they're very quiet. They don't speak up. They don't want a pie in their face. They don't want their career destroyed.
Wow.
So kids in school are hearing a progressive message throughout the country. Maybe not in the South so much, but they're hearing that message. But if you don't have public schools paid for, they wouldn't be so strong. And parents would choose the school of their choice as they did before. And many of the private schools are taking over the public schools today. Not necessarily the charter schools, they're not doing any better. And not all the private schools are doing any better either, because there are a lot of liberal teachers in there, and multiculturalism has replaced the core curriculum of British and American democracy, and the culture of democracy civics is not being taught properly. So for that reason alone, the state should not be teaching history. It should come from parents should choose the school that they think is the best.
Well, you spent a large part of your career. I mean, I know you're an entrepreneur and a property investor there in San Francisco and a jazz musician, but you spent 40 years of your life as a teacher in San Francisco's public schools. Do you think, were they carrying out what Jefferson envisioned, when you started your career, and did it change over those 4 decades? I'm just curious.
From the 1960s on, the rise of multiculturalism, I call it postmodernism, the idea that all cultures have something to say and are pretty much equal. We're all human beings. The public schools are teaching all kinds of culture. That might be all right if you extend the school day 2 or 3 hours, but they're shortchanging basic core curriculum. Students are not hearing American history, the greatness of it. They hear the badness of it. Look what America did. Look, we had slaves. It's awful. There's never been slaves anywhere else in the world. Only America did that. And they're hearing all kinds of. In any case, the day is so filled up that and they're under such pressure not to flunk Black, Latin, and Native Americans. There's such pressure not to flunk them. We don't. And I can tell you, as a teacher for 40 years, what I taught when I started in 1970, I taught the same class pretty much the whole year, my whole life, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, more or less. And here's what I required of my students when I started. And midway through my career, I was fighting it. And people told me to stop fighting it. You're not being paid that much. You're a teacher. I dropped my standards in half. They weren't meeting them. Okay, I couldn't take the pressure anymore. Instead of 2 pieces on the program for the spring concert, there was 1. And if 3 kids could play, okay, I gave them a solo and I played the piano for them. But it wasn't a class. And I got in trouble for giving these students pretty low grades. Says I'm not requiring anything too difficult, and they're not coming up to it. And I was under so much pressure. I was fired from one school. the principal says, my grandson is going to be in your class for violin. And I flunked them. Just, you're out.
Oh,
They
no.
threw me out. Says, you don't flunk my check. He says, he didn't pass. He thanked me in the hall afterwards. Says, I deserved it. Oh no, it doesn't count. It tossed me out from that school.
Amazing.
So the standards have dropped in half.
Yeah.
If you
Well, I
want
wanna
to other cultures, you got to extend their school day 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's what we have. We have a public school system that is failing.
Yeah.
Failing.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, we just have maybe 2 or 3 minutes left, but and I mean, I'm a father. My children are in their 20s. I'm not quite a grandfather yet. You're a father and a grandfather, I know. This doesn't really reflect how I really think, but my question is, have children become more ignorant lately? It's like, is that going up to halfway of what they were expected to know and what was demanded of them, in 1970? How did that happen? I just don't understand.
Not quite. Children today, in some ways, are smarter.
Yeah.
Hanging out on the internet since age 3. They're looking up stuff left and right, and they know all kinds of stuff. They're not dumber.
Yeah.
But what we require of them is half. And so they are on an absolute standard when they take the SAT exam and they're competing with foreigners who don't speak English, and we can't compete with them.
Yeah.
Proof right there.
Yeah.
One of my schools, not my school, but one of my schools in San Francisco is a Chinese immersion school. Students from Asia who come, they put them there, get them used to speaking English. It's the highest scoring school in the city. They don't speak English and they score higher than every school in the city because they work so hard at it. Their parents are on top of them, and even too much on top of them, frankly. And proof.
Amazing.
The kids are not working, the parents are not requiring it, and the schools are not requiring it.
Yeah. And I know, I know, as I said, you're an investor with respect to property, real estate, rather than, owner of a Silicon Valley startup or something like that. But certainly, I'm sure you talk to people in the area and, read the news there. How are the American children measuring up, in terms of the jobs that Silicon Valley needs?
That's why Silicon Valley was angry at Donald Trump for limiting immigration for a while, because they need employees, and they're coming from France and Germany. They're coming from India and Pakistan. They're coming from China, Taiwan, Japan. That's where they're coming from. I mean, I live in San Francisco in an area that happens to have a lot of those Silicon Valley people. They like living in San Francisco instead of living in Silicon Valley, and they take those big Google buses to back and forth. And I'm amazed at how multicultural my neighborhood is. It's a neighborhood of multicultural geniuses.
Wow, that is interesting.
It's very strange. It's weird, actually. 15 different languages are being spoken, and they all speak English perfectly. They're all being paid very well, pushing up the rents in San Francisco.
Yeah.
They don't care what the rents are.
Yeah.
They're making so much money.
Interesting. Well, to close this out, it's almost time to say farewell to our viewers and listeners. But is there anything else you'd like to share from Jerry Brown? I mean, I can't believe that all this time, he was a San Francisco conservative or Sacramento conservative, whatever the case may be, in sheep's clothing. But what else did Governor Brown say?
One great thing, he says, we're asking governments to solve problems that it can't solve. Stop asking it. He didn't say it, but I'm saying it, that most problems are personal. You can be a minority who's discriminated against, but you have to go around it. There's no excuse. You can't say, oh, you can't say that. Every minority will tell you that. And the way minorities have succeeded in this country, one by one, is they turn within to their own community. I like to say, if you're a Black architect and nobody will hire you, will work for a Black architect, will work for Black clients. And pretty soon, if you're good, the market's going to come to you.
Yeah.
You're a baseball player and they won't hire you because you're Black. Start your own baseball Negro league. They did. Pretty soon the Dodgers wanted to win the pennant so bad, Okay, where's Jackie Robinson?
Jackie Robinson.
All you guys come over here. We're going to win that pennant. God damn it. And it just breaks down.
Yeah.
You turn within. And if you don't turn within, you just sit there and you don't make it.
Yeah. Well, I've seen how effective government is at solving all those problems. And so I have to agree with Jerry Brown and with you, of course. I don't always agree with you, David, but on that, I have to. So anyway.
There's nothing better than big government. That's what I agree.
Sorry, Alexandria. So anyway, I think we're out of time for this episode, but I want to thank you all for joining us for another episode of A San Francisco Conservative. I highly encourage you to buy and read David's books. They're really thought-provoking. I've learned so much from them. His first book is Income and Wealth, and his most recent book is, as you've been hearing, A San Francisco Conservative. You can buy them on his website, davidparkeressays.com. You can also buy them through Amazon. So thanks, David. It was great speaking with you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.